Hello everyone, Sientir here with another Rambler for you, and today I want to talk about a sort of, philosophical, existential sort of topic. It's something that I call the time problem. To explain it briefly, it's referring to sort of the origin of existence and one of the problems it has to overcome in determining it. So this is kind of based on a couple of important concepts. One is that you can't have something from nothing. That is, the origin of existence you can't have something come from nothing. So if you're going to have something had to precede it. This is a principle that we're generally aware of. Whether or not it holds up, I don't know. When you look at a broader level than our universe, but it certainly makes a certain amount of sense that you can't have just something spring up out of nothing. The other important thing is that infinity isn't a number, it's a concept describing the numbers go on forever. The numbers never end. There's a couple of related principles that I think are really useful. One is that you can have different sized infinities. A really good example of this is comparing integers, which is, it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, as in it's unbounded. But it's a numerical set that goes like 0, 1, 2, 3, and it goes negative as well, and just keeps counting. But they're all whole numbers, so there's no fractions, decimals, anything like that. Pi, for example, is not an integer because it has a decimal. The next set is real numbers. So this is going to go from negative infinity to positive infinity against another unbounded set, but it also, between whole numbers, so it includes like 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. It includes all of the integers, but between each one, it includes basically an unlimited number of decimals, fractions, those sorts of things. This infinity, the reals, is bigger than the integers because there is infinity between each number. Like, when you think about that, that's just kind of mind-blowing. What this means, though, is that if you're counting something, you can't have an infinite amount. You can't start at negative infinity and count up anywhere. Because, again, negative infinity isn't a number, it's a concept. You can't count from a concept. You have to pick a number and start counting. This is really important when it comes to time, because what happens with time is it's a way of counting sort of change or progression. And without time changing, nothing material changes. So this is kind of an important idea, or at least, and again, this is as far as my knowledge extends, so I'm not like heavily researched in the area. I've mostly just thought about this thing a lot. So this is particularly a topic where I'd love to have audience input. Is there more information you have that I don't? What ways can you see around this problem as I describe it? I see mainly two at the moment. One which may or may not work, and probably doesn't work, but is the second best option. So what this fundamentally means, this time problem, and again, it's something where I can understand kind of the scope of it, but I can't quite comprehend it in the way that I use those words. So basically, you can't have an infinite amount of time because time is always counting. So we have existence, and existence has time. There's material. It's a material existence. It's physical. And we are counting from the creation of the universe, or the beginnings of the universe, however you want to phrase that, the origin of matter, and also the beginning of time. We're counting up towards whatever the heat death of the universe. And the problem that we run into is if we try to go before that, what came before, right? If something, which is existence, can't come from no existence, nothing, and if there's not time, you can't like spontaneously have something happen, right? As far as I understand it, you can't spontaneously have like time exist from absolute nothing. And contrary to Dark Souls' first flame, as it were, Easter egg reference, I guess, for those who are familiar with what I'm talking about. But to have a beginning of existence, there has to be a way for existence to start, including time, which creates some very big complications. What this functionally means to me is that in order for there to be existence, there has to be that which is immaterial and which is greater than time, which is time's master, which is able to create time and is not itself subject to time, because something had to make time happen. This is the concept of this is kind of mind-boggling. There is potential, and part of the problem is you can't start counting from infinity, right? You can't say, well, there's always been sort of a universe creating and uncreating or in a chain. Like, something had to start the very first one, even if there is a chain of universes or that sort of thing. Something had to start the first one. Something had to start that first clock, as it were, the first progression of time. And when you step outside of time and look at it, you can see the whole expanse of it. We call that history, right? But if you were able to step outside of our time progression, you could look from beginning to end and see everything that ever happens. Time is, in that way, finite in a certain perspective. Time can be theoretically unbound on the upper end, but it has to start basically at zero. You could pick -1,000,000 and you could functionally rework the set to be zero, right? So it has to start somewhere because you're counting. Now, it could keep counting on indefinitely. That's okay. And in that case, you still run into... it's okay for something to keep counting forever, but you have to start counting somewhere. That's kind of my point on that. So I don't know if I've well described this particular problem, but just to quickly recap the problem and then kind of discuss the solutions. Time had to start somewhere. Time describes movement in a material existence. For material existence to have happened, you can't count from negative infinity because negative infinity is a concept. It's not a number. And if you're going to count, you have to pick somewhere to start. It doesn't matter where, but somewhere. And negative infinity doesn't count. So if we're going to then address this time problem, the one that I think doesn't quite work, but almost kind of does, is sort of a bounded temporal loop. This is a concept that some people don't like. My sister doesn't like it, for example. And this is the idea that you can create something within a time loop. So this is kind of a set history look at time travel, but it's basically a time travel mechanism where somebody takes something, goes back in time, and hands it to their past self that they maybe use for that period, and then give back, and then travel back in time and give to themselves, i.e. that object exists for the duration of the time loop and not on either end of it. So there is some theoretical possibility that time is circular in a way that at the end of time, as it were, somebody is able to box up the universe and go basically back to its origin and start it in motion. I think this runs into a number of significant problems, the first of which is you're effectively having to start counting at negative something, -1, as it were, which is fine, but how are you boxing up the universe? That's the bigger problem, and transporting it. That seems like a tall ask. Again, I think that this is a possibility, but there feels like there's a lot of wonky problems. Yeah, a lot of wonky problems with this. And it assumes that it's possible to basically box up the universe and transport it back to its beginning. And that requires time travel to even be possible in the first place. Which maybe, but I'm doubtful. And sort of the second option, which is I think the more realistic option, is the more believable option, is a spiritual entity that is a non-material entity that is basically bigger than time or can exist beyond time, that is truly eternal. This is sort of, it's what people would call a god. Christians do, I think. There's definitely, again, an incomprehensibility of something that is bigger than time because we are so bound by time. We are finite creatures in that sense. So I can understand the possibility of an entity that, just like all reals is bigger than all counting numbers, that is, numbers that start at 0 and count up, I can understand that that is true. Comprehending the scope of it is beyond me, where as enormous as time and as powerful as time seems, to conceive of something that is greater or superior to time, that is super temporal, as it were, is certainly mind-boggling. So I would really like to hear if anybody else, well, first of all, if I've explained the time problem adequately to be understood, and what other solutions people potentially see to it. This is, again, it's a philosophical puzzle. If you're going to have matter start somewhere, if you're going to have time start somewhere, you have to have something bigger than time. And again, you can't count from an infinity. So I definitely would like to hear what you think, what you have to say. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.